Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Couch. Shut up. Scott's like, yep, that's Shiloh.
No, it's also me. I get corrected like on a daily basis for, I don't really need that long of an email. You can just give me bullet points.
I'm like, this is how you do it, and this is da-da-da-da. And then I'm like, I think they work in IT. Yeah. It's like Scott and I did a training for like some security people, like basically like their online security for a gaming company recently. And we were like, so this presentation is going to have some graphic inappropriate stuff in it. And they're like, you cannot shock us. Are you kidding me? They were totally
and we did.
Kind of people.
They liked the presentation, but we didn't tell them anything they didn't already know in those respects. Yeah.
They're like 8chan. Do you think that's the worst it gets?
Yeah.
Anyway, welcome to Behind the Couch. Dr. Shiloh here. Of course, I have Dr. Scott with me, and we're going to have some fantastic guests in just a moment. But hello, happy December, everybody. And thanks for being with us on this Saturday afternoon, evening. I don't know if you're in New Zealand, Adam. It's probably like Sunday at some point. Scott, let's do some patrons.
Oh my gosh. We have more patrons. I can't even believe it. Thank you guys so much. Damien went ahead and just gave us the full year, which is nice. Like that blows me away. Merle, Candace, and Jen are all new Patreon members. Thank you. Oh, Candace also did the full year.
Yes, she did.
You guys blow me away. We are so excited because all of the money that comes in for Patreon is going to be used to generate additional stuff for our members and for all of our listeners. So,
and Candace is a former intern of mine, and she's like this badass forensic psychologist in Utah now. So thank you, Candace. That's very sweet. And I'm so proud of all my former students. It's awesome.
we have a couple of people that have reached out to us. Well, actually more than a couple. We've got a few people that have reached out to us since we started this podcast that have actually gone into the field.
Yeah.
And further their education as a result, which just makes me incredibly proud and humble at the same time. I'm so happy people are coming into it because I'm going to steal a line from The Mandalorian. For some of us, this is the way. This is really, this field is really the way. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's for me.
No, it's not. And that's very strange that you said that because I was going to make a Mandalorian reference today. So
was it going to be about the macaroons?
No, it was not.
They're going to start selling blue macaroons at
No, they already have. They've started selling them somewhere. Brandon, remind me if I don't know where they're at, but they were sold out. That color of
course,
macarons were completely sold out. It's like that Tiffany blue. But okay, so why don't I open up these spots? Space Alien Blue, of course. Brandon knows that. You guys can jump on. And we are going to start this very special show. Obviously, I'm wearing my tennis pin right here. What's going on, Brandon? Can you hear us? Everything good? We can hear you. Yeah. Great. And your picture's good. And we're just waiting for the host of your show now.
That's right. Can you see me?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, guys.
Hey.
Thanks for
having us.
Agreeing to hang out. How are you guys?
Good. It's funny because Shiloh, you and I have chatted here and there, and I've listened to both of you for so long. It feels like I know you, but I don't. This is the first time we've actually talked. So
this is cool. Very weird because we've had 2 other podcasts guest on our GetVokls, but we know them, we've met them in real life and all of that. And this is the first voice to voice we've had with you guys, which is kind of a weird bit of a fangirling experience because I am huge fans of you guys.
It's great.
I know true crime consumes my life a lot, and you guys dabble in it every once in a while, but I love you guys for top of my top podcasts. So
thank you. Well, it's funny.
Love what you do.
Me and Brandon.
Thank you.
Me and Brandon were messaging before this, and I was just getting ready for the show and like looking through your website, and then I was like reintroduced to your bios, and I'm like, we have no fucking business talking to these people about true crime.
I feel like a clown.
It's like
Stop
doctor
it.
this, forensics this, and I'm like,
Don't let it fool you.
Please
just
don't let it
words.
fool you. No.
So I was going to say that this was just a complete setup for Brandon and I just to talk about Mandalorian.
Oh god.
We can talk about Mandalorian. I also
Go on
listened
hold.
to I listened to the introduction podcast again just to get your backgrounds again before this,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it intimidated the hell
Oh
out
my
of me
God.
too.
We were
and-
so
You
dry.
didn't listen to the first one?
I listened to the first couple, and then I caught up because I started like halfway through, so I
Yeah.
got caught up more recently after that. But yeah, I re-listened to some early episodes I hadn't heard before, including where you talked about Tony Soprano and Don Draper being examples of sociopaths. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
I caught up with some of the more recent ones today when you were talking about politicians who committed homicide.
Yeah.
First one I
Yeah.
thought of was like, oh, we've got to have Gary Condit on here,
Totally.
and he was the first one.
Yeah. Oh, look who joined us. Brian from Alaska. Not from Alaska anymore, just joined us. You're probably your biggest fangirl.
Well, I'm like, I was worried about Brian for a while.
I know,
blocked-
he went dark, huh?
but he came back. And Brandon, I see Shannon doesn't think you're the real Brandon, so should we come clean and let them know that you're not the real Brandon? The
She's
real
got
Brandon
she's got
wasn't
cat
video
breath
ready.
syndrome.
Yeah,
It's me. Maybe I'm using a different microphone. Maybe that's it.
maybe.
Your sound is really good. But hey, guys, just real quick, how did you come up with the idea? And I mean, how did you get started?
And tell us about your show.
Sure, I'll go first. So Brandon and I, as the host, should go first usually. So, because Brandon is a sidekick host. Anyway, me and Brandon met almost 10 years ago now at work. We worked at the same Tulsa company, not doing IT, but marketing, but close enough to IT.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Anyway, Brandon and I stayed at the same department for a while. Then I brought him to my new job. He was my boss for a while, although I think people that knew us knew who the real boss was. And anyway, Brandon and I would travel a lot for work, and there was times when I would just like pull up a Wikipedia list of the top 10 best-selling albums, for example, and I would just say, Brandon, guess this list. And
There you go.
we pretty much just did the podcast in real life.
It was just
That's
as
great.
abrupt and aggressive.
Yeah.
Would you like to guess a list, or are you
Right.
thinking of something else right now? Are you busy?
Right.
Yeah.
Busy with that hot
You're
dog.
like, can you put that hot dog down and guess this list?
Thank you.
Yeah, what are Sylvester Stallone's top 10 movies?
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
Well,
And
it's
it's funny. Sorry,
ahead.
real quick. I was just going to add one more thing that we did try with the true crime pod first, and it
oh, that's right.
like I don't want it to ever see the light of day. And
you wouldn't release those
we-
on Patreon or anything?
I thought about it, but it's so bad, and it's like
It's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
Brandon's-
We
yeah.
basically just read aloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's what a
that
lot
was
of
like
people
2
do.
years before 10ish. Yeah.
Well, it's a great concept. Shit, I just did what you did last week, Scott, and I touched my iPad and now it's talking to me. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Great concept. It doesn't get old. I mean, you guys come up with top 10 lists, and I think that's a lot to your relationship and how you play off each other, just in the show. And that's what people are looking for. So thoroughly enjoy it. And so we're bringing your concept here tonight. And Nick and I have come up with a top 10 list that Brandon and Scott know nothing about, and they have to guess. So you guys should probably stop looking at the chat at some point,
Okay.
because I'm guessing our people are going to
close.
want to play along. It's going to be really hard not to
It's hidden.
dash over there.
I've moved the whole screen over so I can't see the chat, but I also am bereft of Esther right now. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's my transitional object. I depend on her.
So Nick, you want to tell us what our topic is? Give us a little intro.
Yes. So today's topic is one near and dear to all of our hearts, and it is about serial killers, of course. And it's not just serial killers, but the top 10 smartest serial killers ranked by their estimated IQ score.
So start
that's
thinking,
great.
Start thinking of,
Yep.
you know, who may be up there.
I was really worried today that I wouldn't have the background or the context to be competitive in this. And I heard Dr. Scott admit to not being competitive, and I thought, well, I'm not either. We need some kind of mojo. But as soon as you said serial killers, I got my mojo working.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little fired up too. So
I think you guys will do well.
Serial killers and porn searches; those seem to be Brandon's specialties.
Oh my God, Brandon and I are actually the same person.
You know what's funny is with that episode, the research has changed so much in like the last 5 to 10 years, because I have this book that I talk about all the time called A Billion Wicked Thoughts that was just based on like basically Pornhub research. And it really informed a lot of the work that I was doing when I was working with sex offenders who were looking at everything that was on the internet.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, is that the top search now? It wasn't like that 5 years ago.
And when did you go to the conference? You went to a conference just like a couple of years ago where they were talking about the newest draw in porn, and it was the surprise.
No,
face?
that's been like 10 years, Scott.
That's been that long.
What? What's the surprise face?
So that so when they were ranking the types of searches, that they were surprised that penis was always in the top like 5, and they figured out, these mathematicians crunched the numbers and figured out that it was because of the shocked look on the woman's face when a penis is in the picture. She's always like, like it's so like astoundingly amazing, because like the other body parts were female body parts. So thanks, Scott, for making me act that out, by the way, to explain it. But
but I remember being in the room with you. I can't believe it's been that long. But you were like, oh my God, the research shows that this face is like really.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you see the Rockefeller Christmas tree in person.
100%. 100%.
That was eye-opening. This has been eye-opening already, but
hasn't it? I know.
Leave it to us.
Yeah. Okay, well, so this is top 10 smartest serial killers. Dr. Shiloh found this list on ranker.com. So should I go through my section here?
Yeah, why don't you just tell us a little about it?
Okay. So as we all know, serial killers are often portrayed in media as these evil geniuses, and like they're one step ahead of the victim and the police at all times. And while there may be some cases of that, it's actually the minority, I would think, and that most serial killers are actually pretty dumb. Like the Henry Lee Lucases of the world, and so many other examples.
My list, and I'm only coming up with ones to cross off the list, like hilariously cross off the list.
Right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that like it's important when we're talking today that we're not at all putting these serial killers up on some sort of pedestal of like, man, they were so like, yes, we all know they're terrible, but look how smart they were. It's like a movie villain, and it's not. These guys weren't as smart as they thought they were. Their arrogance is what led to their downfall, and the mistakes that they made. Anyway, all that said, I'm going to read the serial murder definition according to the Serial Murder Symposium held in 2005, the unlawful killing of 2 or more victims by the same offender in separate events. So people that did that, the top 10 smartest.
Yeah, so it's actually a pretty vague definition. And when the symposium was done, they sort of did that on purpose to let law enforcement have some leeway with that. But I wanted you guys to keep it in your head, because it might not be the person with 35 victims necessarily,
right?
Because really only 2 are needed, but you know, it gives you a little bit more to work with.
Yeah, and I'll say,
yeah,
turn it over to you here in just a second, Shiloh.
Sure.
Dr. Shiloh, excuse me, the esteemed.
Oh Jesus.
Now I lost my train of thought. Oh, I'll just say, when I first heard about this topic, I had 2 killers in mind that I'm like, those have to be 1 and 2, and they're not. They're not even in the top 5. So there's a few surprises in here for me. So just wanted to say that.
Yeah. It's a very interesting list. I wanted to just do a little nerd out to talk about what we're talking about when we talk about IQ, and how that's assessed and what the ranges are. So we can get a little bit more into what we're looking at here, and people also in the audience can kind of start thinking about who might be on there. So IQ stands for intelligence quotient. I have not administered an IQ test for a very long time, but it is a huge pain in the ass. Most often we use this assessment called the WACE for adults, and there's versions for children, and there's other assessments that you can do as well to get an IQ test, but the WACE is kind of the most common assessment tool. And basically it looks at verbal IQ and performance IQ. So you do 14 little subtests that can be like basic vocabulary, comprehension, math, but then there can also be things like where you have these cards with a story and you have to put the story like the cartoon in order. Or you see a picture of this design made up of blocks, and then you have blocks in front of you and you have to recreate the design. So it's kind of fun to administer. It's actually kind of fun to take as well. So average IQ is 100, and then there's sort of ranges from there. So average is 90 to 109, but 100 is true average. If we're going to go down from there, low average is an 80 to an 89. What we call borderline is 70 to 79, and then an extremely low IQ would be 69 and below. If we're going to go up, I know, if we're going to go up from average, a high average is about 110 to 119. Superior is 120 to 129. And then very superior is 130 to 144. And then there's some tests that even say that 145 plus is what is called very gifted or highly advanced. So for reference, about 98% of the population is under 130. To be a member of Mensa, you have to have an IQ score of 132 or above. Have you guys ever taken an IQ test? Do you know what yours are? Anybody?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I was in the gifted program. Does that count?
Yeah.
Yes, maybe.
I mean, I know what mine was years ago. But there's a lot of problems with IQ tests. So mine was 129, but you know, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer for a lot of subjects. But I will say this: I had a roommate when I was working at state prison, and she was a few years younger than me, and she was a member of Mensa, and like the coolest, most hilarious, dry-witted person. And she was freaking brilliant. Like, she was really, really smart, and not like, you know, show off smart, but like, it was kind of amazing that kind of, you know, when you saw that somebody that functioned at that high of a level, it really showed.
If you really want some entertainment, go onto the Mensa website, and they have like quotes from members who have joined, and it's like, I didn't only find social activities and friends like me, but I found my future husband. And I'm like, what is happening? This is so weird. Okay, so the top 7 killers on our list are a 145 or above. So they're in that very gifted range. And then the last 3 are going to be in the very superior range. So we're talking really like high IQs here. We had to cut it off at 10 because there were some people with some high IQs. So, all right. That's really interesting. So you guys don't look at the chats. Chat, please join in and start guessing. But Brandon, you're our guest. Do you want to guess?
Kick things off.
Yeah.
We usually scratch a few off the list that absolutely can't be on the list first.
Let's do that.
There's no way that Charles Manson is on that list.
He's not a serial killer.
He's not a serial killer.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, I don't. No, he's not. No.
There's no way that Jeffrey Dahmer is. I'm gonna say that Gary Ridgway did not make the cut.
Safe guess, yes.
Or Pee Wee Gaskins.
Gary Ridgway was just super lucky to just be that dumb guy living in the same place.
I was gonna say Eileen Wuornos is definitely not on that list. She,
No.
she doesn't even really meet the criteria for motivations that the others do. So
True.
although I think she was actually way smarter than people gave her credit for. Would not be surprised if she had high, but she doesn't fit that criteria. Who else?
Brian says no, Richard Ramirez.
Oh God, no. But I would say one thing about all of these, especially some of, you can be not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but still be incredibly gifted at being manipulative.
Oh, sure.
Right.
So don't look
or cunning.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Like, yeah, there's a
dumb
difference
like
there.
a fox,
You're right.
like we used to say in Alabama.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely just going off of intelligence quotient here, but I think there's a ton of factors that we could talk about personality-wise,
Well,
like you're saying, Scott.
Mm-hmm. There has to be, even the dumbest, like on paper, serial killers, there has to be some level of what you just said, Dr. Scott, in order for them to kill multiple people and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
For any period of time, there's some level of that there. But could they pass a fourth grade math test? Not all of them.
Yeah, no, I think that's,
couldn't either. Fourth grade math.
I don't know.
Right.
Actually, I don't know if I could pass that either, but with a new math. But I think that's a really important point. I don't know. It's interesting. You said Brandon, you were saying you wanted to knock Jeffrey Dahmer off the list, and maybe I don't know as much about him. He seemed like
He didn't seem to be definitely wasn't a standout student
Okay.
in school. I don't think that was necessarily because he was not at least of average intelligence. I think he was probably around average intelligence. I think he had so many emotional problems that he would have had difficulty succeeding no matter what. But I seem to remember he worked at the was it the chocolate? Yeah, the chocolate factory or the candy factory. He kind of did menial jobs.
Well,
Yeah.
I know.
So let me tell you something. Dr. Shiloh covered it. She said average is 100, high average is 110 to 119, superior 120 to 129, very superior 130 plus, very gifted at 145 plus. And according to our research here, Jeffrey Dahmer is at 144, number 7.
He's number
the
Get out of
7.
town.
it's
Yep.
the quiet ones, Brandon. Yeah.
Didn't I?
But you know what? I can replace him with somebody. I can replace him with another one that we can knock out. Ed Gein was like probably developmentally disabled, very low IQ, but just a pure animal. He was
Yeah.
just like an animal.
So Nick, tell us about
Personality
Dahmer.
Equivalent of pudding.
Yeah, well, so I agree. I would not have guessed Dahmer myself. I was closer to Brandon there. I would have picked him at average, but yeah, he's 144, number 7. So Jeffrey Dahmer, probably the like Michael Jordan of serial killers, or however you want to put it. He's like the face of the genre,
Yep.
for better or for worse. So most people have at least heard of Jeffrey Dahmer, and we know that he killed 17 men between 1978 and 1991. Let me move my notes over here so I'm not looking away all the time. Hang on. Okay, so Jeffrey Dahmer, arguably the most famous killer on the list. 17 murders, most of them in the early 90s. He'd pick up men, mostly at gay bars, take them home before drugging and strangling them. He was also a severe alcoholic. So most, if not all, of his murders, he was blackout drunk, from what I recall. And because he was a product killer, he did not enjoy the process of killing. So he would drink himself to the point where he couldn't really be in the moment of the murder, because he just wanted the product of the body at the end. So once they were dead, he would have sex with the corpses, and he would dismember them, take photos of them, keep their bodies, parts, genitals in a lot of cases,
He was a real jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Real jerk, Brandon.
It's kind of
Nailed
evil
it.
genius to think about. I'm going to make myself a sex zombie and just like, you know.
And keep experimenting until you get the results. And one of the saddest things about him, I mean, I'm not empathizing or sympathizing, but the guy clearly had the genetic predisposition towards psychopathy. I mean, there's certainly genetics involved in it, but if you look at the drive in his interviews, the motivations, that it boils down to basically one simple sentence: is he did not want to be alone. Like he really was trying to attach to another in these relationships, but the structure of his brain and his psyche was so fucked up that there's no way he could have ever had any kind of productive relationship. So he basically, I mean, wanted a like you said, a sex zombie, you know, and was experimenting with trepanning and, you know, impacting parts of the brain and keeping these guys alive for days at a time to see if he was successful in his creation. Very sad.
He should have joined Mensa. Right. He could have met someone.
Yeah. Could have gotten married.
Yeah.
Can I add one that I think is at the top of the list?
Yeah.
I think Dennis Rader.
Not in our top 10.
I wrote him down, but I thought I read that he was just sort of average. He was just in the, it's kind of the theme in his the fake side of his life, that he was exceedingly average.
He thought he was smarter than he was.
Yeah.
Well, definitely a narcissist.
He thought he was
definitely a pure narcissist.
Yeah, not on the list. I don't know where he's at. But...
Oh wow, he's not on the list.
Nope.
Here's my reasoning. I thought that he would be on the list because he got away with it for so long.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
sense.
sense.
Because then he stopped murder. His last murder was like 20 years, maybe not 20, 10 something years before he was actually caught. Because did he have a one last murder at the end?
I think there was a gap.
Been inactive for a while?
There was a period of inactivity. I don't know if it was right before, but he did sort of he was
getting excited again. His kids had left the house.
Yeah.
And he was he continued he resumed communication with the police because it was arousing, and he felt a little bit of freedom with his children gone to dip his toe into that again.
And that's what got him.
A left field guess. I don't think maybe isn't on the tip of other people's brains, but I remembered this guy today when I was thinking, like, what can I pull out of my hat true crime wise? How about Andrew Philip Cunanan?
That is I did not think anybody would guess that, because I agree. He's not on top of my radar, even though I saw the series on him, the Versace.
Yeah, we did an episode on it.
Right. He is on here, Brandon. He's number 5.
Wow.
With an IQ of 147.
147?
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, he was able to maneuver his way through class hierarchy in the gay community, and you can't do that. I mean, you can do it on looks alone as a young person, but you can't reach. I mean, he was really in with the rich party crowd there for a while. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I had forgotten his name, but yeah, that's a good example. Wow.
Yeah, and it's one of those interesting cases. To me, this is like my own perception, that he's like what we said a minute ago. He's not on the tip of most people's tongues, even though he killed like a super famous person. And his own, I mean, he had 5 victims total, and his whole story is so interesting, but he's kind of a lesser known killer, I think.
There was a period in which he was at large, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He is the only serial killer, and I don't know why this is funny to me. He's the only serial killer I've ever had a nightmare about. When I was younger, when it was going on.
We both turned our heads to the side, like,
interesting. No, it wasn't. It was during when he was at large. It was all over the news that there was a serial killer on the loose who was shooting people, and it was something that had been in the news. And I must have also recently been to the mall, because that's where it happened. Andrew Philip Cunanan was loose at the mall and was just he was turned into a spree killer.
You were shopping for a Versace shirt, and you're like, no.
Yeah, there was a lot. Yeah.
Just
I don't
so
think
many
they
choices,
sell Versace
right, Brandon?
shirts at the mall.
What year was that when that happened? When he?
It seemed like it was
Versace
the
done.
mid '90s. It was. I
Yeah.
was probably 14 or 15
Yeah, it sounds
when it
right.
happened.
Well,
So-
let me tell you about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to tell you about our friend Andrew Cunanan here, listener of the show, maybe. He was a very bright student, and he reportedly spoke 7 languages. Brandon, you can speak 7 languages, right? At least 5 or 6. Is that right?
Yeah, I could do barnyard animal noises count as a language.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so he ran into trouble at school when he was pathologically lying. So he did develop an obsession with violent sex, even prostituting himself in his teens. His killing spree began with his former lover, Jeff Trail. And in 1988, when he was 19, his father deserted his family and moved to the Philippines to evade arrest for embezzlement. And that same year, Cunanan had begun frequenting local gay bars and restaurants, and his mother, who is deeply religious, learned about his sexual orientation. That paragraph, I think, is super important to figuring out who this guy was, because he was super smart, spoke 7 languages, but his father was a huge narcissist as well and deserted the family to evade arrest. And then his mother was deeply religious, and Cunanan himself was gay. All of that is like the perfect stew to become a serial killer.
Yeah, I think the biology of it plus the environmental factors, because his
The
dad was
trauma.
like clearly a con man as well,
Yeah.
and that's what he
Yes.
was so good at, being a chameleon to
and
be a
it
parasite
says-
of a lot of people.
He could blend into the gap. He could pop out at the cookie stand.
I
Like,
bet
so
it
scary.
sounds terrifying.
He
He
did
offer
suffer
you an
from-
orange Julius, and then suddenly you're torn apart.
I was just going to finish by mentioning he did have antisocial personality disorder that they found later. And despite his numerous kills, the FBI could not catch him because of his, quote, intelligence to flaunt them. And he even appeared back in the gay social scene after his murders. And his last murder victim was Versace before he killed himself at age 27.
Yep.
So-
I went
I
to
think a lot of
mansion.
Number 5.
I think another factor in that was probably pretty integral in his criminality is him being a person of color and but being light-skinned with, some features that could have spanned different ethnic backgrounds. It was contributed to an identity problem because he wanted to be sort of out of this milieu. Like he all of his victims were white guys, I believe, right?
I think so.
I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And he, you guys would know better than me, but I seem to recall that he kind of idolized his father, who was a con man. So just going back to the biological, and like, there's a lot of nature and nurture with this.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
But the
What about,
the movie was so
yeah.
good. Gosh, one
Yeah,
of my
movie
favorites.
was great.
Wait, which movie?
The Killing of Gianni Versace.
Oh, so the series, you mean?
This series, yeah.
Okay.
What's his name?
Sorry.
Chris.
I was just
Something.
making sure, yeah.
Scott,
So
you're gonna
what
guess?
about? I was gonna say John Wayne Gacy. Just another one because he got
No.
away with there's number of victims. So he's not on the list.
Is not on the list.
No, I'm
Okay.
kind of curious what his score would be, but it's not on here.
Yeah.
I don't think you've got to be like supremely intelligent to run a bunch of Kentucky Fried Chickens.
Or lure a bunch of boys dressed as a clown.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
How
had
about-
easy victims. I mean, easy in quotes, but like
Yeah.
when I say easy, I just mean there was a
No.
lot of low-hanging fruit, I guess you could say. Like
Vulnerable people,
Yeah, I mean
vulnerable
that's-
situations.
we did one episode where we both kind of went into the serial, the long haul trucker serial killer, which basically those guys just they open their doors and the victims come in, because it's generally truck stop sex workers.
Sure.
So yeah, okay.
It's
I'm
like
wrong
Dean
on that
Corll
one.
too. Dean Corll just had no shortage of victims, just like coming to him
They're throwing those cool parties.
with all the candy.
Okay,
How
Brandon,
about,
you got a guess? Yeah.
Joel Rifkin.
Oh, that's
Is he on the list?
He is not on the list.
Another one I was thinking about, and then Nick said there were some that he was sure would be like the top 2 and were not on here.
Mhm.
This is one I suspect could be one of those. Ed Kemper.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
that is who I was talking about, Brandon. He is on here. He's just not as high as I thought.
Right.
What was
any
his
guesses
score?
of where he's at?
Is he number
one-
8?
Where do you think he's at on the list?
Where he's on the list? I'm gonna say he's up there in the top 3.
He's number 6 with an IQ of 145. So he's up there. I mean, these guys are up there. Remember, I said the top 7 were in the very gifted range. So they're, I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer just makes the cutoff at 144, and then everyone else is above that. So, yeah.
Kemper's whole brand of like, when you think Ed Kemper, most people think like the intelligent, well-spoken killer, right?
Right.
Which is why I thought he'd be higher, but he's not. Still in top 10, but
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly when people think of him, he's sort of that double threat because of how smart he is. And then just, 6'9", 300 pounds. I mean, if you were creating a serial killer, this is terrifying.
Well, even when you listen to interviews with him, and then when you see how accurately and well acted he was by the actor, I'm blanking on the actor's name, that played him in Mindhunter. What that actor was able to do was consistently reproduce his language style, and his language and grammar is really impressive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, investigators even described him as a natural born killer, which I think kind of encompasses all of those things we're talking about. So Ed Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer. Co-ed, I didn't think about that's his first name also until I was writing this down. It's like, that's an interesting double entendre. So I'm sure everyone's very familiar with him, but his kill count is 10. So his victims include his grandparents, whom he murdered when he was 15. He also killed a number of co-ed young women from the nearby college who he would pick up as hitchhikers. And then, of course, lastly, his mom and one of her friends. And Brandon, what was it that he did with his mom's head?
Ooh.
He face fucked it.
What's the technical term? Because you taught me that, I will say.
What was that term? It starts with an I.
Yeah, it does. There is a technical term for it.
And it's not irredeemable.
No, there is not. Anyway,
I'm looking it up because
let
I
me
remember
know.
that. It's the first time I heard it too.
So in a true evil genius move, it's believed that he kept the heads of some of his victims for days before disposing of them. Sort of this planned out, like, how can I keep from getting caught? And he managed to evade law enforcement for 9 years. And he is the one on this list who actually turned himself in. So he called the cops and was like, hello, have you not discovered my mom's body yet? Are you coming for me? What's going on? So he was found sane at his trial. He obviously was found guilty in 1973. He requested the death penalty, which they did not give him. And he got 8 life sentences. And every time he comes up for parole, he waives it because he's like, nope, I'm thriving here in prison. I'm fine. I'm reading audiobooks,
Yeah, I've wanted to get a hold of one just to see. He is. I was going to say that if that actor is replicating his speech and his speech patterns, he's really engaging to listen to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the type of guy that is loving life in prison. Like, he has, there's nothing for him out there. And something you didn't touch on in your description was that he was also what's the word for it? Almost like an undercover serial killer with the local police.
You're right.
Because he was friendly with the local police, and he would talk to the police about this serial killer going on a rampage in town.
Yeah, he
And
would
so
hang out at
he
the bars
knew.
with the cops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he knew what the cops knew about him.
He was
about the killer.
loving it.
Yes. Yeah, he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia as well, and sent to Atascadero State Prison, which is here in central sort of Northern California, after he had killed his grandparents, and then he was released at 21.
Which he
from that.
clearly does not meet that diagnosis at all.
No. I mean, and especially if he was
For
15.
schizophrenia?
Yeah.
No, he doesn't have schizophrenia. He's a psychopath, but he does not have schizophrenia.
What would you like summarize as the key reasons for that? Just
Well,
curious.
I mean, schizophrenia is a result of brain structure, and there's a lot of theories about how it is activated in the brain and how it expresses. But basically, schizophrenia is a psychotic disorder, and it means that you perceive the world in an altered way. So you hear, see, feel, smell, and believe things that are not objectively true. Or you can take things in your environment and you can misinterpret them to an extreme degree as something that gets sort of integrated into a belief system. But the most common symptoms are auditory hallucinations that can be either malicious or benign, as well as visual hallucinations. But they're very impairing. You don't really see mild schizophrenia, and he's got too many positive symptoms. Like, he has social skills, and one of the things that many people with schizophrenia really struggle with, because they have so much stimuli hitting them all the time, constantly, 24 hours a day, is that they tend to have negative symptoms, which is they isolate into themselves. So, and once again, and the vast majority of people with schizophrenia are not violent and do not express violence. So only a very
I'm guessing
small
like
percentage.
they didn't know, this is a 15-year-old who killed his grandparents, and
And they
who
just
knows
couldn't-
what he was saying, but I'm just
They
guessing
couldn't
they were like,
throw
what
something
is
on
that?
him.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They kind of just threw that on anyone that they couldn't.
They couldn't
diagnose.
write down cuckoo bananas.
Yeah.
Something like that. Isn't it weird to think
Yeah.
that he's 71 now?
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I always just picture him in the 70s, with what.
And he's still 6'9" too.
Yeah.
Is he?
Well, maybe,
Son of a bitch.
maybe a
He
little
hasn't
shorter.
shrunk?
He might be a little shorter.
Still.
So
Good
what
guess.
if we
Yeah.
are we doing? So are the people on this list, when we're looking at their IQ, are there only people that have been tested, or have they been done forensic sort of profiling to determine?
Well, we have an exact score for all of them, so
Okay.
I don't know how to give you more information about.
Well,
the
I'm just because I
background
was
of
going to
this.
go historic. Like, I was going to say somebody like H.H. Holmes, who
Oh,
had like really elaborate plans for his
Right.
killings. But
I don't think we have that info on him.
Okay, so
someone
he
that
is-
old,
Okay.
that vintage.
Who's
I'll say
next,
that.
Brandon?
I've been thinking about one that I recently watched a documentary on. What about Robert Hansen, the butcher baker?
Ooh, Robert Hansen. I just
I'm
watched.
blanking on him.
He's the guy from Alaska, right?
He's from
Yeah,
Alaska,
he's the
and
hunter.
he was obsessed with the most dangerous game, and I think he posed as a photographer maybe, and he abducted women
Mhm.
and flew them out to a remote area and hunted them.
Have you
And,
seen the Netflix movie with Nicolas Cage? It's called Frozen Ground. I just discovered it. But
I'm
Nicolas,
writing that
Is it new?
Yeah, it's newer. Nick Cage is actually the investigator, and
He should have played every part though.
Exactly.
I
That
know,
would
I
like
know.
all of them.
Gosh, I'm freaking blanking on who played Robert Hansen. He's not on the list, but great
Ah.
guess. And I was
I'm watching
obsessed
that.
with him too.
Chris in the chat says John Cusack.
Yes,
Is that
John
right?
Cusack plays him.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I got to see that then.
It's good.
It's one.
It's good.
It's one wild summer.
It sure is. Not on the list
Um,
Brandon, let me give you a hint. We
Okay.
covered. I'd never heard of this killer until you brought her sorry, him or her,
Nice.
to my
They.
attention in the states with the most serial killer episode we did recently. She's part of a couple.
Mhm.
That's a strong. I mean,
That is a
I don't know how
strong
much stronger
guess.
hint I can give you.
He's just trying to
Trying to
remember,
remember
her
their
name.
names. Okay, I'm not gonna come up with it.
Okay, does Charlene Gallego ring a
Gabe.
bell, or Galicia?
Yeah,
There you
and
go.
she was. Who's the guy she was with?
Greg. No, Gerald. Sorry,
Gerald, her husband.
hmm Yes, they committed crimes together in the 70s. She's number 3.
Wow.
She had an IQ score of 160.
Yep.
Holy
What
shit.
state were they from? Maybe that'll jog my memory.
I want to.
Was
I
it
actually don't have
I'll
that. I
look.
say Nevada. Yeah, I believe it is Nevada.
I'll
but-
look it up.
Nevada. I know someone. I can't see the chat, but someone in the chat tell me how wrong I am in the way that I said it.
Yeah, is it Nevada or Nevada? Somebody.
Nevada. We're right next door.
How are they gonna? It's Nevada. What is it? Nevada.
Nevada. Brian, am I right? You
That's
live
what I
there
always
now.
say.
Come on.
Next
No,
longest street
Sacramento.
She's out, isn't she?
Sacramento.
She's out. She served her time and she's out,
out.
right?
That's right. She's done and she's out.
Yeah, Sacramento,
Spoilers,
California.
guys. I got all it.
So yeah,
She only served like 7 or 8 years. No, 17. Wait a minute.
she must have
Yeah, 17 years she
tricked
served.
somebody.
That's the one that would be waiting for you in the mall, Brandon. You got to be careful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sacramento, California, between 1978 and 1980.
Women love to shop.
Women love to shop.
I think she's at Cinnabon now. I'm pretty sure she's at Cinnabon.
She's on lingerie at Victoria's Secret.
Well, I wonder how old she would be now.
Tell us
She's gotta
about.
be-
I want to know more about her.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're going on too many side
That's
things.
all right.
So she is a rare female serial killer. She was married to her husband Gerald, and in the late 70s, let's see, they kidnapped 10 people, some as young as 13,
Oof.
and they were all mostly female. They raped and kept all of them as sex slaves before eventually killing them. So that's
That
brutal.
Yeah,
Another jerk.
it's how it usually goes when
Yes.
it's a couple.
Big time jerk.
That's not
she
nice.
reminds me of the Toy Box Killer. Wasn't he the one that
David Parker
he
Ray.
and his
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
they would kidnap people in a van, make them slaves, and then make them forget and put them back out into the wild. Anyway,
Anyway,
he's not on the
How
list.
would they make a?
Yeah.
I'm unfamiliar with that. How would they make them forget? Would they drug like Rohypnol or something?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
I don't know the drug, but they did drug.
I know that they would inject them with something. They had done they did a lot of experimentation
Mhm.
with drugs, and they were not afraid to take their time with they usually kept them in some type of drugged state for most of their stay too.
Gee, that must have been,
Making all,
so back then that it would have been pentothal.
I was gonna say sodium pentothal, like it's also the truth serum drug, right?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
basically
that's
also
the one I
if
was gonna say, and I thought I might be wrong.
Yeah. No, it's that's actually it's not it's better used as creating a dissociative fugue state than it is actually truth serum.
Yeah. I think I listened
Brandon?
to an episode of Case Files, I think was the
Okay.
podcast I listened to, and they went through David Parker Ray.
Well, Scott, you were the one saying you were unfamiliar with him, right?
Yeah.
With David Parker Ray. You really should look him up, and there's a tape out there that he would play for all of his victims.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
So when they first woke up, it's something out of a horror
It
movie,
is.
and it's like the worst thing you'll ever read or hear. So
I thought about for like for bonus content, reading it and like recording it in case like a true crime person wanted to hear recording of it, and then I thought there's no way I can have my voice
Don't do
on
that.
record out there saying these
Oh
things.
my God, no! Don't.
Well,
bad
that's
idea.
actually really smart.
They can transcribe it.
Yeah, everybody needs to be careful with that kind of stuff, and the way that everything can be digitally reproduced. You got to be careful.
yeah.
All right, so who?
So let me tell you. Sorry, let me tell you more about
Christine.
Charlene.
what's her name?
Charlene.
Charlene, because she did agree to testify against her husband.
Of course you
And
do.
because of that, she only served 17 years. She was released in '97, so she's been out a while. And while in prison, she extensively studied psychology, business, and Icelandic literature, which is also a hobby of mine.
I had the time to just do nothing but study. I would study something ridiculous.
She did claim she was a victim, of course. And she also claimed she tried to save some of their lives.
Jeez.
And, yeah. And her husband is dead now. He died while awaiting execution.
Interesting. That's a good one.
Mm.
Glad to see that a woman made the list.
Yes, representing.
That, just make sure you got your shoes on, because that glass ceiling is broken.
Scott, we covered one of these.
Is she the only woman on here? I think she is.
And we might have covered more than one, but we
But I think we
definitely
covered
covered.
What about,
Definitely
look, I'm
covered
not I don't think Ted Bundy is as smart as everybody says he is, but I think he might make the list.
Like, I think he's the other one I thought was like Ted Kemper. He's got to be number 1, but he's actually, I'm going to guess he's number 8.
That Ted Bundy's number 8?
Mm-hmm.
Ted Bundy barely made the list. He is number 10.
He's a dunce.
He's yeah, Ted, you're not as hot as everyone said you were, and you aren't as smart as everyone said you were.
Oh, come on. Now you're attacking his looks?
Yes.
Well, everybody always builds him up to be like just super
I know.
gorgeous, and it's like, he had a couple of good angles, but it wasn't that.
You're no Zac Efron.
Yeah, you're no
it's all
Zac
relative.
Efron.
Look at his
Zac
competition.
Efron, yeah.
But maybe from the back, Nick, hell of an ass.
What? Help? Oh, of course.
Right?
Well, I mean, you know he did. That's why. Well,
Those tight corduroys.
we'll get into it, but
anyway.
he was, yeah.
So
Especially.
his
The bubble butt of a young Republican.
his IQ score was 136. So he comes in at number 10. We all know about Ted Bundy. I thought it would be interesting to just talk about his education, if he is, so smarty pants. But he, not his education, but he did escape from custody twice, which is not something you hear about very often. Probably goes more to his charm and his charisma of being able to finagle a room with a telephone and a window in a court building. But he attended the University of Puget Sound for 1 year before transferring to the University of Washington to study Chinese. And in early
I guess I forgot that. Chinese. Sorry, that's so random.
I know. In 1968, he dropped out of college, worked a series of minimum wage jobs, and then he ended up volunteering at the Seattle office of Nelson Rockefeller's presidential campaign.
Wow.
And he actually became Arthur Fletcher's driver and bodyguard during Fletcher's campaign for lieutenant governor of Washington State. And then he went to the 68 Republican National Convention as a delegate. And then mid 1970s, he was now more focused, goal oriented, and he re-enrolled in the University of Washington, this time as a psych major. And he became an honor student and was very well regarded by professors. And then in about 1971 was when he took the job at the Suicide Hotline Crisis Center, where he met and worked alongside Ann Rule, who was the former Seattle police officer who wrote The Stranger Beside Me. And he did graduate in 1972. And then in 1973, despite some very mediocre LSAT scores, he was accepted into law school at the University of Utah. And he did not finish because kind of around the time he started skipping classes, a bunch of women started to disappear in the Pacific Northwest. So
big coincidence.
Yeah, he stopped school for his new hobby, which he was good at for a while. And, I think his smarts, his ability to sort of change states, also the ways that he would lure his victims by feigning injuries or disabilities, or impersonating authority figures, definitely plays into how his intelligence impacted his crimes.
And I think his success in this field of serial killing was also his ultimate downfall, which one of the reasons he was so successful was the charm and the confidence and the bravado and the charisma. And all of that also led to his downfall because he got cocky. He represented himself in court for the trial for his life. and he just thought his whole life he thought he was smarter and better than everyone.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting point to make, because serial killers don't all come out of the same psychological mold. They certainly have a lot of the same characteristics. But when you talk about that in particular with Bundy, it is his narcissism that undid him. Like the idea that, like, he is a smart guy, but the idea that you think that you're going to get up with this level of a heinous crime and be able to defend yourself in a court of law, like that is really the ultimate expression of narcissism.
They all want to do that. Jeez, they're like, it happens so often.
And
now.
he thought till the end that he was gonna talk his way out of it.
Yep.
It's like, I've watched a shitload of Matlock. I got this.
Yeah.
And I'll propose to my girlfriend in the middle of a court proceeding.
And then the day before I'm executed.
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm sorry.
I got you. I legally got you. You said it.
Did they have they had a kid, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure.
Yep, on
Like
a conjugal visit. Yep.
And then the day before he's executed, he blamed it all on porn. So
Yeah, so there's that. Awesome.
Smart guy.
Thanks for stigmatizing porn, Ted.
What about Ken Bianchi? Is he in the top 10?
Huh. No,
guess,
but
not
that's
know.
a good guess.
Yeah.
What about I got one that I don't think could like have been tested
Okay.
because he wasn't caught, but I'm just going to throw it out there in case there's some kind of math I don't know about. The Zodiac Killer.
I was wondering about that too. But
maybe he's number one, but we don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
maybe.
funny
Yeah,
point.
who knows? No, he's not on the list
because
you're right.
Didn't they finally put his cryptogram into some computer program, and it showed
like
that
a
it was
supercomputer.
nonsense? That it really.
No,
was that
I
true?
actually followed up on that pretty recently with someone that I know was connected to a show that they recently did, and he said the computers at USC are actually still working on it. The computer is still filtering it.
It could still be all bullshit.
It could
though.
still be bullshit, and that's
And,
why.
and he knew it was just sent
Or
people
he could
in
have just
circles.
he could be so not smart that he messed up his own
Right?
Exactly.
That's
Cipher.
absolutely true. Yeah.
So how about another Ted on the list?
Mhm.
Scott?
How many people did Ted Kennedy kill? Just one, right?
Just one. Maybe two
That we-
if you no.
That we know of.
That we know of.
Ted Kaczynski.
Yes.
Oh, right. Well, clearly he's got to be on the list.
Yeah,
That guy's
yeah,
brilliant.
definitely.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to guess a ranking?
Is he number? He's got to be like number 2, right?
He's gotta
number
be
1
number-
or number 2.
Yeah.
Bingo. Number 2.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he comes in at number 2. His IQ is 167. This is definitely
Jeez.
who I think of when I think legit serial killer genius. And I also think that this is what got him into trouble, not necessarily because of teasing police or putting stuff out there, but I think it's the way he wrote. he wrote in a very specific way. It's very hard to break away when you're taught in academia to write. I know. So in the 70s to the 90s, he killed 3 people and injured 23. So he killed much less than a lot of the folks we've talked about today. But the Unabomber had a big problem with modern technology. He was accepted into Harvard at 16 years old. And to take a stand against modern technology through the 70s and 90s, he mailed bombs to mostly professors at schools, but also big industries like airlines, factories that were looking at big industrial companies and things like that. And he would leave messages encrypted with mathematical codes that the FBI couldn't even crack at some point. So he managed to escape capture for 17 years. He had a 17-year run there, which I think features a lot of genuine intelligence. It was ultimately, like I said, his downfall probably coupled with a little bit of ego to put his manifesto out there. But
Yep.
you know, his style of writing, which I was kind of thinking, Scott, like, isn't it hard to get out of that APA way of writing for everything when you literally have been, you know, traumatized by writing a dissertation in a certain style? And a lot of that is how they were able to pinpoint where he was from some of the periodicals that came out in that area of Chicago. So if you guys can ever listen to Special Agent Fitzgerald talk about the linguistics of it, aside from that, the Unabomber series was really good. They did a really good job, but it's fascinating to see how they broke all that down.
You know, I think also there's an interesting parallel. If any of you have watched The Social Dilemma, has anybody watched Social Dilemma?
I watched a little bit of it.
It's really great. I mean, I have two colleagues that watched it and literally shut down all of their social media. I watched it and I think it's really, really well done and really informative. And it's really a warning to anyone. I feel like I'm pretty aware, like, yeah, I know I know that I have an algorithm and I question like what is coming up on my feed. I don't just like mindlessly watch flat earth videos on YouTube for 15 hours and then, you know, try and convince people. But one of the things that they were talking about that really was chilling was the idea, and they were talking to the top IT people in the world about that there are a lot of different entities in the world now that are AIs that are already analyzing your typing pattern and your speech pattern that you use when you type IMs, when you type emails, and not only the language that you use, but the cadence and the rhythm of your keyboard speed almost identifies you as much as a fingerprint does.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
That's really weird to think about.
So he was
I gotta
right.
keep shaking it up with GIFs.
All this stuff.
So, I mean, isn't that interesting? I mean, like,
Yeah.
you know, look at all the great things that technology's brought us to, but there is a grain of truth in what he's talking about.
Yeah. I don't think they're crazy ideas. It's just how he went about making his point.
Well, it makes you wonder. Sorry. Yes, I agree. It's like he had some good points, but he's an asshole. And also, I want to make a side point here. Not to defend other serial killers because they all suck, but the ones, at least they had the balls to like kill you to your face, sort of thing. You know?
Oh, he
Ted
would never do that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very like non-confrontational and
Exactly.
yeah, which I don't know. Maybe he's
well.
smarter
No,
for doing it.
that actually has to go to a certain, I think, a certain specific classification of people who kill in that way. Is that he really lacked the ability to connect with people. He's probably on the spectrum. Some places, he does not get interpersonal actions. It just doesn't compute in his head.
Yeah.
And that's where all of his anger went. Like, you know, it just compacted over the years of the world is bad because the world doesn't understand me. So I'm going to create an ideology that explains the world to me. And now I'm going to try and convince the rest of the world around me why they're wrong and I'm right. And that's a different level of metacognition that's completely fucked up, but it's metacognition that a lot of our dumber serial killers, they're not even operating on that level.
Yeah.
And that's why he lived in a tiny cabin in Montana like a hobo.
Isn't that cabin somewhere now, like in a museum or something?
Yeah, it's in DC. It's at the museum in Washington, DC.
Ah, museum. Damn it, Brandon. Brandon and I almost went to the museum when we were in DC. And I don't
they have
remember
so
why
many
we didn't,
good
but...
things. They have his cabin. I was there last year.
I did a presentation at the FBI in Dallas last year, and they have a couple of display cases with all these items that were found in the cabin, all these handmade items and his papers and his typewriter. It was really fascinating.
Yeah.
Brian says he was always good at sending out Christmas cards, though, and most of us can't say that.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you for your contribution.
During during the holiday season, it's important to remember that in each of us there's a spark of hope.
Yeah. Until the liberals cancel Christmas.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You went and said that word.
Couldn't
All
help
right.
it.
How many do we still need? Brandon, you look like you're keeping notes.
Yeah, I am. We're missing numbers 1, 4, 8, and 9.
Oh damn! You guys
Okay.
got a long way to go.
I know.
And I'm gonna start getting like ramping it up here.
These
I'm
are
gonna-
harder. I wouldn't have guessed these. I'll just tell you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna throw out the 2 that I don't think are in the top 10, but I did write them down. They might have somehow eked by. Israel Keys,
No.
Nope.
No.
Jerry Brudos.
Nope.
I didn't think Jerry
No.
was
Good guesses, though.
particularly brainy, but he does seem to be fairly well spoken.
Yeah.
Especially
I'm
about
wondering-
shoes.
Is Carrie Stainer in there?
Ooh, that's a good guess. But no, the
No, who's that?
the Yosemite Killer.
He was this Yosemite Killer, and he was just so odd. He was intelligent in a way, but like, I guess he didn't meet our criteria.
You might
Wanna
need
give some
hints on
guesses.
these.
Yeah, some hints.
Yeah, I'm gonna need hints too because I'm going through the
Yeah, I'm
list
ready.
without. Okay, what you
Okay.
got?
I'll give one. So, number 9 is one half of a pairing, a serial killer duo.
2 men, not a man.
2 men.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Right. Thank you.
Neither Leonard Lake or Charles Ng, right?
No.
Nope.
They were a couple of
Yeah,
Those-
boneheads.
Yeah,
Oof.
those guys.
Charles Ng, and not Otis Toole. Like Otis was DD as well, right?
Yeah.
No, no way.
No.
Okay.
No,
Poor Otis
Um,
Toole. Is he still around?
he can't be.
I don't
If Ed
think so.
Kemper's 71, can't be. Are still around.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
maybe.
two men.
And they have
One
a
of the DC snipers.
No, but I was
No.
surprised that wasn't. They weren't on the
Malvo,
list.
yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't. I think someone tried and guessed him earlier in the chat.
Ooh, what about? Is it either one of the Hillside Stranglers?
No,
No.
I wondered about them.
But they
Yeah,
do
no.
have like a catchy name. For
It's not the
pair.
Boston Stranglers because they were also cuckoo bananas.
Yep.
scientific term. No one in the chat has guessed these people either that I've seen.
I'm
Let's do
blanking.
it.
You said they have
Let's-
a catchy name. Who is it?
All right. It's
give it.
one half of the Toolbox Killers.
I was thinking of those dudes. They drove the van up and down
Yes.
the Pacific Coast Highway, right?
Lawrence Bittaker or Bittaker. sorry,
Bittaker,
Bittaker,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Mhm.
Number 9 with a score of 138. And if you don't, and I've definitely heard of the Toolbox Killer, but first of all, Brian fucking Blue Man Group in the chat. That's
Yeah,
a good guess.
I know.
Um,
Because he lives in Vegas now.
Where was I? Toolbox Killers. I know the names. I've heard like the top level about them, but I didn't know a whole lot until I started researching them for this recording we're doing. They captured, raped, tortured, murdered 5 teenage girls. But even before the murders, Lawrence Bittaker had trouble with the law, and while in state prison was found to be, quote, paranoid and borderline psychotic with little control over his impulses. But as many geniuses do, I'm reading a quote here, he managed to get himself released. And that's when he met Roy Nelson, which is his co-Toolbox killer. They bought a van, which they nicknamed the Murder Mac.
Ew.
They often used a wire hanger and pliers to torture their victims, and an audio recording remains of them hammering one of their victims' elbows. Fuck. And once they even left a body in a random lawn. And they were only found out when Norris, the guy we're talking about's partner, he was picked up on a minor drug offense, and that led the local police to search their apartments. And Bittaker's apartment revealed several Polaroid photographs, which were determined as depicting 2 of their victims. And inside the van, they found a sledgehammer, a plastic bag filled with lead weights, a book detailing how to locate police radio frequencies, a jar of Vaseline, 2 necklaces, later confirmed to belonging to the 2 victims, and a tape recording of a young woman in obvious distress,
Ugh.
screaming and pleading for mercy while being tortured and sexually abused.
Jesus.
So the police couldn't ask for a better find in terms of,
Evidence.
establishing, guilt and evidence. He eventually died of natural causes in the California Medical Facility in 2020,
Yeah,
age 79.
very recently. Actually, so our friend Chris Duet, who does the Criminal Perspective podcast, he had a podcast partner for a while that's not on the show anymore, but he went and was interviewing someone up at San Quentin where Lawrence Bittaker was just earlier this year, way early before COVID. And Lawrence Bittaker was like in the next, I don't know, visitor spot next door or something. And I think Andrew asked him, so what do they call you in here? And he said, Pliers. Like that's his prison nickname. Ugh, so gross.
Wow.
So creepy. But yeah, then he died like literally a month or two later.
Yeah.
I wonder if he got the COVID.
Oh no, you said it was natural causes.
Wow.
I guess it still could have been gotten.
Probably wrote it off that
past
way.
the COVID.
Yeah.
And I skipped over one important note that when they were searching their apartment and shit, they also found acidic materials and 7 bottles of various acidic materials, and they determined that they were they were planning their next attack and victim when they were caught.
Wow.
So
he was number 9 on that list.
He was 9.
So now you need 8.
8, 4, and 1.
Yeah, thank you.
We still haven't got number 1. Okay, wait. Ted Kaczynski was number 2?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Jeez.
Number 1 has an IQ score of 170.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a hint on him.
How many people did Stephen Hawking ever run anybody over?
Great guess.
In the Wiener, in the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
No, in his wheelchair.
No, I know, but sad.
That's not funny.
An hour in, and Brandon's finally bringing the good stuff.
And we got to hurry this up though. He's almost his bedtime.
I know.
Number 1 was on TV, and before he was known to be a serial killer.
And he has long.
On the dating game.
Yes.
The dating game. Is that Richard Ramirez?
No.
No.
Rodney Alcala?
Yes, thank you. Rodney Alcala.
I got one. I would not have thought he had that high of an IQ.
You got number 1.
Yeah.
Like that blows my mind.
Yeah. Me too. He was not on my radar at all. But I think
I'd heard of him. I didn't remember his name, but I had heard of the serial killer who was on the dating game.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that the thing that fascinated me about that was they interviewed the young woman that won him or chose him.
Yep.
And she was really well on the game, and she was like, yeah, I'm not going to go out with him. Like got a vibe off of him immediately.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
And not just her, but the other contestants on the show. Let's see, where's my note on that? Sorry, okay. Anyway, I can't find it. I'll just read all my notes and I'll get there. So he was on the dating game show in 1978, and host Jim Lange introduced him as a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the darkroom at age 13, fully developed.
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
Yeah, that stood out to me as well. A successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the darkroom at the age of 13, fully developed.
Look,
film.
Well, let me
he had a bush hair.
Well, let me place this in context because I'm older than all you guys. Is in that time when shows were on, like we had Match Game and the dating game, there was a lot of titillating humor that would never get past censors today. It was actually quite common.
They were aware.
Yeah, so they would.
I've seen some of the highlights on YouTube. I know
right, so they would make double entendres like that probably would. I mean, we do
that
some of
makes
that.
Sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how
it's funnier if it was unaware.
Yeah,
but
you have to read it like a cheesy guy in the 70s trying to
with a long
date.
microphone, like a Gene
fully
Rayburn
developed.
Right.
Yeah.
Ew.
Steve
13.
Harvey would be like rolling over in his grave. At this
Oh yeah.
Oh wait, he's not dead.
I'm like, wait, what? Did I miss that?
Yeah, he's. Well, oh yeah, and this guy's not
He
dead
might
either.
still
He's
sleep in a
alive.
grave at night.
Wait, Rodney is still alive? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's 78 with 3 death sentences, remains in California State Prison.
Yeah, he's at Corcoran, Scott.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when he won the competition, I found that note I was trying to find. Another Bachelor contestant later described him as a very strange guy with, quote, bizarre opinions. And that stood out to me too, because describing someone with bizarre opinions, it's not like something you hear a lot, like that guy was dumb or that guy was weird or that guy gave me the creeps, but
Right.
bizarre opinions is like kind of specific.
Yeah,
But
it means that he had to reveal something, like that they actually had enough of a conversation to be completely creeped out by what he was saying.
Yeah. And the Bachelorette said the same thing. She found him creepy and refused to go out with him. And criminal profiler Pat Brown noted that Alcala killed at least 3 women after his dating game appearance and speculated that the rejection from the Bachelorette might have been an exacerbating factor.
I think that's conjecture.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit of a stretch. He was a killer anyway, so
Yeah, he had killed before. Before
and
show.
after. Ugh.
Yeah. And investigators found more than 1,000 photos he took of his crimes, including teenage boys and girls.
Yeah.
And some estimates guessing he had around 50 victims, although he was only found guilty of 5. And on his first trial for the murder of 4 women, his crazy IQ meant he managed to get off on technicalities, only being sentenced in 2005 when DNA evidence finally nailed him for the crime.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember them doing a lot of news stories and having a website with all the photos because they had not identified everybody in all those thousands of photos, and they were trying to see who else might be victims. Fun fact, my mom was on the dating game several times in the 70s, but never told me about coming across this guy.
I was going to say.
I know.
That's huge. We got to hear more about that.
I need to bring her on to a GetVokl one of these days. We'll
So
see.
she was on the show?
Yeah, she was on both sides. She was one of the bachelorettes and one of the contestants. And I think I got the story right. She went on the vacation with the contestant, and then they always sent like a chaperone. And I think she ended up hooking up with the chaperone. Is the
oh my god,
the story. I'll have to
Sounds
confirm
about
it.
I like that better.
That Vic
I know, right? These other 2 I hadn't heard of. Had you heard of them, Nick?
let me
That are on the list?
refresh my memory. Number 4, no, I have not heard of number 4, and number 8, I had not heard of either.
Any
Okay,
other
clues?
guesses, or you want to? Okay, let's see.
I need clues. I'm
okay.
tapped.
Let me go with number 8. So this took place in 1996 in South Carolina, and he only killed 2 people. And he is...
I'd be surprised if you'd heard of this guy.
I'm like...
Aziz Ansari.
When he was
I was-
He's from
6.
North Carolina, maybe.
I was going to say he's not American, but let me give him to you. So number 8 is Stephen Christopher Stanko. Appropriate last name.
I've
I like
never
that.
heard of Stanko.
Stanko.
His Stanko leg.
He's number 8. His IQ is 143, and he is from Cuba. And prior to his murders, he had been incarcerated for assault and kidnapping. Oh, I'm sorry, that was in 1996. His crime actually happened in 2005, so it was more recent. So he goes to prison for 8.5 years. He writes a book called Living in Prison, A History of the Correctional System with an Insider's View. Maybe we can get Ed Kemper to narrate that one for us, and then we can all mash this list together. But about a year after being released from prison, he began doing library research, supposedly for a second book. So he starts hanging out at the library a lot. While doing this research, he befriends Laura Ling, and who's a librarian, eventually moves in with her as her boyfriend. And then he also developed a friendly relationship with this guy, Henry Turner, who is also kind of a regular library patron. But shortly thereafter, something goes terribly wrong with both of these relationships. Stanko ends up strangling Laura and shooting Henry and sexually assaulting Laura's teenage daughter, who survives and ends up calling 911, and the cops end up catching him because she turned him in. But he was, when after all of this went down, when they were searching his place, they found articles on Jeffrey Dahmer and Gary Ridgway. They think that either he was studying them or it was research.
He's a fanboy.
Yeah, fanboy, or his research for his next book. No one knows what his book was about.
A little bit of both.
But yeah, there was definitely there was a psych eval done at some point, because it was noted that he had a lot of characteristics of psychopathy, like a grandiose sense of self and importance, and a failure to conform to social norms, lack of remorse, all that stuff. And he was convicted and received 2 death sentences.
That's interesting, because I remembered that name and I'm looking him up, and I remember now he is a great example of a killer. Every photo of him has a 1,000-yard stare. Like his eyes are really,
yes,
they are.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. He looks pretty empty. But
yeah,
evidently.
It's interesting because he's actually a pretty good-looking guy, and in his prime, he was quite handsome. Very, very masculine features with the big square jaw and the big brow ridge and everything. Yeah. But like the dead shark eyes picked in all of his pictures is kind of a giveaway, I think.
He looks like the kind of guy at like a get-together, talks to me a whole lot about a sport I've never watched before.
Just like monotone.
Doesn't get to hint.
Yeah, he tells me all about lacrosse.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Man, I know you're really into it.
I'm not going to do sports, but I swear to God, when I meet you in person, Brandon, I'm going to corner you and like just talk about Harry Potter.
Oh my God. Oh, all right.
I'm okay with that.
So,
okay, good.
Our last one, we should probably wrap this up. We're getting to an hour and a half here, and I have like a drive-through Christmas light event thing to do, because that's what we do in 2020.
And your mom's here, by the way.
Yeah, I know. What'd she say?
Your mom in the chat.
Shit.
She hooked up with the guy in Mexico City because the chaperone was a female.
Well, it would have been more interesting if you hooked up with the chaperone who was female.
I was going to say, she didn't rule that out, though. She didn't say, I didn't hook up with the chaperone.
Thank you.
This has definitely got you in the Christmas spirit before your
I know,
Christmas
right?
drive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so
like, I hope to God my mom never even finds my podcast.
Are you kidding me? My mom was a cop. Where do you think I got it from?
She's awesome.
Yeah, we're missing number 4.
We're missing number 4. So this was someone who was offending from the 40s to the 80s, and they killed 15 women and 1 boy. Really, there's like no cool name. There's no nickname or anything that I can give you that is gonna. Yeah. It's a male.
He has the 3 names. The serial killer.
Is
right.
Wayne? Is one of them Wayne?
I know.
I'm blanking. I don't know.
Any last ditch?
Carol Edward
Wait,
Cole.
it's not. Wait, was Richard Speck? No,
Richard
wasn't
Speck
Richard Speck.
Richard Speck was not a genius.
Yeah, he was.
So
That's right.
it's Carol Edward Cole, but he's male. First name Carol.
That's why he
That
killed
had to
him.
have something to do with it. Yeah, thank you.
Maybe. Well, he's got
A boy named Sue.
I do have a note here that says mommy issues much. So as a child, he was forced to watch his mother have sex with other men while his father was away. And to keep him from telling his dad, his mother would threaten to beat him. And she also dressed him as a girl when he was young. And his name was Carol. So
Wait a minute.
But he didn't grow up with gravel in his guts and spit in his eye from being
from being bullied so much.
You are so Johnny Cash right now.
Yeah.
What I want to know is why his mom made him have sex, but then made him not tell the dad. So how about just don't make him? Made him.
Right.
He didn't.
Yeah,
he just got to watch.
Yeah, she was.
She
was stepping out on dad when he was gone, but.
But then just don't let the kid watch. And then he won't know.
Maybe they lived in like a 1-room cabin or something.
Yeah.
Or she took him to the hotel room with her. It happens.
That's fair.
Flop house, a 1-room flop house.
Yeah. So his first murder is thought to be, well, it was the drowning of his friend when Carol was only 8 years old, though nobody realized it at the time. And then he confessed to it way later. This friend was supposedly bullying him. I don't know how many friends he had, but yeah. So,
One down.
yeah, he went on to have fantasies of murdering women he actually would call the police and tell them this. And he had checked himself into psych hospitals because of his fantasies. Those fantasies eventually turned into a reality. He would pick up women in bars and kill them, targeting women that he believed to be, quote, loose or adulterers. So this is where I have mommy issues in bold writing. He was caught twice by police in the middle of violent acts, but maybe his genius is coming out because he managed to talk his way out of those situations. But eventually he was caught and sentenced and executed for the death of 5 women, though they speculate that his death toll might have been higher. And the judge that sentenced him gave him the death penalty, and he just simply told the judge, "Thanks, judge." So he died. He died by lethal injection in 1985.
Wow.
Yes.
Sometimes when you know your time is up, you accept it with open arms.
You're just like, thanks. Yeah, exactly. But you guys did a really good job on this. I feel like I would have blanked on a lot.
Should that be I don't know if it's a compliment or maybe that's more reason why I'm having frequent nightmares of serial killers.
Scott has birds flying around his head for some reason.
He just got hit on the head by a cartoon mallet.
I missed it.
Well, at least like the 2 doctors here with us have a valid reason to know so much about these serial killers. You and me, Brandon, are just whack. I'm
just trying to scratch a nasty itch.
Brandon's got some good knowledge.
I'm impressed. Brandon, you have a comprehensive knowledge. I mean, I know I'm actually always impressed with when people know this much about it, and I don't think it's unhealthy. I think that there's actually that people are drawn to these kind of things because it is so alien to our nature that it makes us want to have introspection into our own motivations. I think that there's actually some very healthy things about it. So
I think I've mentioned it on our podcast before, but when I was in my early teens, we would do the summer reading program. Where you if you read enough books, you get the personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut.
Oh, yes.
And when we went to the library, I would take a hard left over to the adult nonfiction section and get all the books on serial killers.
Yep.
And fill out my Pizza Hut thing so I could get that pizza.
Nice.
And a lot of that information.
Now let me add an addendum onto what I just said. Is if I was the librarian and there was a 13-year-old that was constantly coming in and reading those, I would be a little concerned.
I've been red flagged for decades.
By junior high librarians everywhere. Well, thank you guys
kid that comes with his mom.
for doing this. It was so much fun, and I'm glad we got to collaborate on something.
Yes.
Other than coming up with a list for you guys.
That's awesome.
But
thanks so much. We'd love to come back anytime.
Okay,
yeah, let's
can you
do
tell
it again.
people where they can find you?
Yeah, so we are the 10ish podcast, and we spell that 10ish, and we're on every single podcast player there is. We also are at 10ishpod.com. We have over 100 episodes and counting every Wednesday. And
all the social media, they're everywhere.
Yeah, all the social media. And I should mention too, we do a lot of true crime lists just like this one.
Yeah.
And we do other stuff too, history and movies and pretty much anything you can think of. But true crime is my podcast passion. That's what led me and Brandon to the podcasting world. That's still the top genre of podcast I listen to. So I try to do true crime every once in a while. But yeah, we'd love to have you check us out.
Yeah.
We're due for some more true crime. You can find me on Twitter at Sidekick Host.
Yes. There you go. Well, thank you guys again. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please check them out. Please subscribe to their podcast. You won't regret it if you're not already doing that. Listen to their cults episode. Scott and I curated the list for their top deadliest cults. That was a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. This was a blast.
Have a good night, everybody.